This is Grahame Lynch for CommsDay Live, and today we're talking about CommScope, the company in North Carolina, USA. Their origins date back to 1976. You may be familiar with some of the brand names that they've acquired and absorbed into their company. Probably you're using some of those brands in your networks. Aris, Ivana, TE Connectivity, Andrew Corporation, and Via Connectivity Solutions. Well, today we're privileged to be speaking with Erik Gronvall, who's the Vice President, Service Provider Strategy and Network Architecture, and he's based in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. Welcome, Erik.
Thanks, Graham.
Good to see you. Now, my first question to you is regarding the obvious global trend, the move towards higher speed broadband. Now, in both wireless and wired networks, that obviously requires considerably denser networks, but new fibre everywhere is not necessarily desirable or even affordable. And CommScope has a proposition that basically says, look at the value of what you already have. Can you please elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I'd love to, Graham. Yeah, we definitely want people to know that as you're moving to higher speed networks, whether you're looking to service residential customers, business services, or even trying to deploy a 5G network, right? The existing networks that are out there do have significant capabilities. Maybe not all of the networks that are out there, whether it's a twisted pair network or a coax network, will be able to support all the applications, but they all have things that can be leveraged and can be used to move forward into some of these higher speed networks that are required in the future, especially as we're thinking about any of the fiber-based networks. So if you've got a network with either a fiber to the home type of network or a deep fiber network like a HFC network or a fiber to the node type of network, all of those can be used very, very readily to help move towards higher speed residential, business services, and even 5G types of networks. And so that's a big part of what we do, is trying to enable the reuse of what's out there from a network standpoint to continue to allow for those next generation technologies to come along.
Okay, so one of the concepts that CommScope talk about that I find quite interesting is that of virtual dark fiber. Basically applying wave division multiplexing to existing lit fiber to create a new unused capability that can be deployed for new usages. Can you please explain the concept behind that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, this is one of my favorites too, because it really brings so many opportunities to a service provider, whether they've got if you've got a fiber to the home network, right, the ability to hang 5G small cells off the edge of that, the ends of that network where you maybe have fiber drops going to homes or whatnot, being able to use a WDM overlay across the top of that PON network to do things like 5G, mobility services or 5G fixed wireless types of services off the end of that network. It's really, really attractive from that perspective. And it only takes, a couple of small passive components, one at the central office head-end location to allow to mux those signals in, and then one at the end to peel off the signals that you want to use, right? The nice thing with most fiber-based networks is that they're already able to distinguish between the different signals that are out there. You may need to put, depending on what the way that the network is architected, you may need to put in some blocking filters at some other locations, or filter off some of the WDM signals at another location, but relatively easy to do. And you can multiply the fiber that's out there in the ground by up to a factor of 40 or 80, which is pretty significant. Going to your first question on how you can reuse networks, right? That's a big piece of it.
Okay, now CommScope also describe HFC as the original converged network, which is a big claim. What does that mean? And is that relevant for today?
Well, there's some relevance still from an HFC standpoint as you look at networks today, both for obviously for high-speed residential and business services. It's always been there. But to answer your first question around the original converged network, right, that comes a lot from it started as a video distribution network, right? The HFC network started as a video distribution network and moved to be able to do multiple types of services for residential, yes, and then for business services across that same platform, which was not what it was designed for. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about converged networks. We're talking about putting more services across the same existing platforms that are out there. And so I think that's where when we say it was the original converged network, it was the first network that kind of started to bring together different technologies onto one platform and deliver multiple services over one medium. And I think going forward, right, does it have application going into the future? Definitely. There's a lot of fiber in an HFC network. There's a lot of capability for that network to help distribute out to small cells. The other thing that's really attractive about the HFC network is it has power in it, and potentially can be used for some of the smaller small cells that are out there and being used. And that's a big advantage, right? Knowing that the three things that are the hardest as you move towards a densified wireless network are obviously data. Well, HFC has that. Power, HFC has that to a small degree, right? Not for all types of small cells that are out there. And then site acquisition, and some of those small cells can sit on those same power lines and things like that that the HFC line runs on. So yeah, so definitely a lot of application going forward in today, and for high-speed data services for residential and business. The next generation of HFC technology certainly has a lot of legs to be able to go after, gig and multi-gig services for residential and businesses.
Okay, now CommScope has also coined a new term, adding to the telecommunications lexicon, Crosshall. Now, can you please explain for us how you distinguish that from backhaul and front haul?
Sure, it is, right? I mean, this comes from the wireless industry. As you've moved into 5G, where you can start to now move different components of the broadband or the baseband processing around within the network. And so you may have heard the terms CU and DU and RU in the wireless industry. Those three components, as they move about the network, the links between those three things are, typically called front haul, back haul, and mid haul. Well, X haul is kind of to capture all of those together and say, well, we're looking at all three of those. All three of those can be handled by this network, no matter where you decide to place your DU, your CU, and your R. Well, obviously RU's at the edge, but no matter where you decide to place your CU and DU.
Okay. Now, I guess this is all particularly relevant for wholesale access networks who are looking for new revenue streams and ways to leverage existing assets for new services. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely. Right. I mean, I think anyone who is looking to get additional revenue from any type of network that they have, and that's whether they're they're a service provider and they have extra capacity and they want to use that for wholesale services, or whether they're a neutral host type of network and they have assets in the ground, whether that be fiber or sites and things like this. All of these have a lot of applicability as we move into this converged network paradigm going forward, right? The wireless and the wireline industries kind of coming together and playing nice together, right? Especially as we move into 5G, where you've got that high level of densification of the wireless network, and you start to get those cell sites further and further out, closer to residences, closer to businesses, closer to where the people are. Those assets and that ability to then lease those assets to other companies becomes a really big advantage and a really good way to make the business plan work for digging fiber into the ground, which, obviously, like we described at the beginning, reusing as much fiber as you can and milking those assets as much as you can helps your operational costs, but also, as you're looking at define a new business plan to put out fiber, in your network today or out new telecoms, then these wholesale services become a really attractive component of that business plan.
Yeah, well, that's terrific stuff, Erik. Thank you very much for joining us today on CommsDay, and hopefully we'll get to meet you in person one day.
Oh, I'd love to. Nice to meet you, Grahame.
Yeah, when the whole pandemic's over, we can fly again. Take care.
Exactly.
Okay.
We'll talk to you later.